Dr. Eliza Chen's hands trembled as she replayed the alien transmission for the 5th time. The laboratory's blue emergency lights cast eerie shadows across her colleagues' faces as they huddled around the quantum resonance scanner, a device meant to detect dark matter fluctuations, not intercept alien communications. "It has to be a hoax," muttered Dr. Patel, running his hand through thinning hair. "Some hacker's elaborate prank. A prank that created quantum-entangled particles speaking in 17 distinct linguistic patterns." Eliza countered, enlarging the holographic display. "Look at the physiological variances in these beings. No human could imagine this diversity. The aliens in the transmission defied conventional biology. Crystalline entities suspended in floating orbs, gas-based intelligences contained in mechanical suits, multi-limbed arthropods with exoskeletons that changed color as they spoke. And at the center of it all, the being identified as Supreme Director Kvex, whose translucent body pulsed with internal lights that flared when it declared Earth too dangerous to remain free. Outside the reinforced windows of the Mariana Trench Research Station, the crushing darkness of the ocean floor mirrored the weight settling on Eliza's shoulders. "They've been watching us," she whispered. "For how long?" Her assistant, Lewis, who had been quietly analyzing data in the corner, looked up sharply. "The transmission mentioned 3 extinction-level events in our recorded history. They know about the dinosaurs." A chill ran through the room. 65 million years, Dr. Patel breathed. They'd been observing Earth for at least that long. The dinosaurs, the Toba catastrophe that nearly wiped out early humans, and... Eliza paused. "And whatever they think, we just survived," Lewis finished. "The pandemic." Eliza shook her head. "No, listen to their language. Defeat, not survive. They believe we actively conquered something that should have destroyed us." The secure comlink chimed, interrupting their speculation. "Secretary General Torres responding to your emergency protocol," announced the system. The holographic display reconfigured, revealing the tired face of Marcela Torres, 3 years into her term as UN Secretary General, and clearly pulled from sleep. "Dr. Chen, this had better warrant a midnight protocol invocation." "Madam Secretary," Eliza began, then faltered. "How does one announce first contact and imminent imprisonment in the same breath? We've intercepted an alien transmission. Authentic, verified, and concerning Earth." Torres' expression shifted from annoyed to alert. "Elaborate." "A collective of advanced species has voted to contain Earth behind some form of barrier. They view humanity as an evolutionary threat. They're mobilizing now." Rather than disbelief, Torres' face hardened with determination. "Transmit everything to the Secure Council server. Authorization, Torres Epsilon 9. As Eliza complied, the Secretary General continued. "How long do we have?" Louis analyzed the transmission data. "Based on their described deployment timeline, 3 to 5 days before their vessels reach our solar system." Torres nodded curtly. "I'm activating the Phoenix Protocol. All space assets on alert, worldwide military standby. Dr. Chen, you and your team are being relocated to Geneva immediately." "My daughter," Eliza said suddenly. "She's captain of the Sentinel, patrolling the Kuiper Belt. They'll encounter these aliens first." For a moment, Torres's official mask slipped, revealing compassion. "I'll ensure she's briefed personally." The connection terminated. In the silence that followed, Dr. Patel voiced what they all felt. "We always wondered if we were alone in the universe. We just never considered that making contact would begin with a death sentence." Outside, the abyssal plane remained unchanged, dark, silent, ancient. Above, unaware of the judgment just passed upon them, billions of humans went about their lives, blissfully ignorant that alien eyes had been watching for millions of years, measuring humanity's capacity for violence and survival, and finding it too dangerous to allow. Captain Amara Chen felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders as she studied the alien vessels through enhanced imaging. The UNSC Sentinel's observation deck offered an unobstructed view of humanity's first confirmed extraterrestrial contact, and it wasn't the momentous celebration of cosmic brotherhood that decades of science fiction had promised. Magnification factor 10, she ordered, and the central holodeble zoomed in on the nearest alien construct. The vessel, if it could even be called that, resembled a massive geometric lattice, more than a conventional spacecraft, its surface rippling with energy patterns that defied Earth's understanding of physics. "That's the 17th unique design we've cataloged," Lieutenant Rice reported, updating the tactical display. "They're deploying in a spherical formation encompassing the entire solar system." Commander Jackson approached with a data tablet displaying urgent communiques from Earth. "Captain, Phoenix Protocol is in effect. All civilian space traffic is grounded, military assets are on high alert, and the Security Council is—" He hesitated, falling apart. Amara finished for him. She'd seen the initial footage of the emergency session before communications were restricted to essential personnel only. "The Russian and Chinese delegates nearly came to blows," Jackson confirmed. "Half the council wants immediate military action, the other half is pushing for diplomatic restraint." Amara's attention shifted to a notification on her private channel. A direct transmission from Secretary General Torres, marked Eyes Only. She excused herself to her ready room, heart pounding as she initiated the secure playback. Torres's face appeared, the bags under her eyes betraying her exhaustion. "Captain Chen, what I'm about to share is classified beyond top secret. The alien transmission was intercepted by your mother at the Mariana facility." Amara's breath caught. Her mother had mentioned a breakthrough with the quantum scanner, but nothing about Dr. Chen is being relocated to Geneva to join a specialized response team, Torres continued. "Your vessel's position makes you our first line of both defense and potential contact. I'm authorizing Operation Cosmic Shield, effective immediately." The transmission detailed humanity's response plan. Sentinel would maintain observation distance, while specially equipped stealth probes gathered intelligence on the alien technology. Meanwhile, Earth's governments would prepare for possible first contact, or conflict. "Captain," Torres concluded, "your mother asked me to tell you something personal." The Secretary General's official demeanor softened slightly. She said to remember Kilimanjaro. The transmission ended, leaving Amara momentarily stunned. Kilimanjaro, their code since her childhood for situations requiring patience over impulse. Her mother had used it when teaching her chess, mountain climbing, and later, officer training. A strategic patience that had saved Amara's life during the Venezuela crisis. Commander Jackson's voice came through the intercom. "Captain, we're picking up movement. The alien vessels are launching smaller crafts." Returning to the bridge, Amara watched as hundreds of satellite-sized objects emerged from the larger ships, forming what tactical analysis suggested was the framework for the containment barrier. "Orders, Captain?" Jackson asked, tension evident in his voice. Around her, the bridge crew awaited her command. Some wore expressions of barely concealed fear, others resolute determination. All understood that whatever she decided would likely be recorded as humanity's first official response to an alien civilization. Amara thought of her mother's message, patience over impulse. She opened a channel to Earth Command. "This is Captain Chen of the UNSC Sentinel," she began, her voice steady despite the pressure building behind her eyes. "We are maintaining observation position at coordinates 43 Kuiper 7. Alien vessels have begun construction of what appears to be a barrier system. No hostile actions directed toward us yet. Requesting permission to deploy reconnaissance drones per Cosmic Shield protocols." As she waited for Earth's response, she added privately, "And someone get me everything we have on quantum barrier technology. If they're building a cage, I want to know exactly how the lock works." Outside, the alien deployment continued with mathematical precision, each component moving into position like pieces in a cosmic game of chess. Humanity might be outmatched, but they would not be passive participants in their own imprisonment. Not while Amara Chen had anything to say about it. The Confederation vessel's atmosphere tasted metallic, with undertones of something reminiscent of cinnamon and ozone. Dr. Elijah Okafor tried not to show his discomfort as the environmental system adjusted to human physiology, a courtesy he hadn't expected from beings who had voted to imprison his species. "Your respiratory systems are inefficient," commented an entity composed of swirling plasma contained within an articulated exoskeleton. The translation came through the neural interface the humans had been instructed to wear upon boarding. "We are compensating for 14 distinct chemical requirements simultaneously." "We appreciate the accommodation," Okafor replied, maintaining the dignified calm that had made him Earth's chosen diplomat. Behind his composed exterior, his mind catalogued every detail. The ship's architecture favored curves over angles. Materials seemed to shift density based on pressure, and despite the variety of alien physiologies present, a distinct hierarchy was evident in their positioning. Lieutenant Maya Ivanova moved slightly closer to a bulkhead, her specialized contact lenses recording everything. Officially, she was Okafor's cultural attaché. In reality, the former Spetsnaz operative was Earth's insurance policy. "Your delegation will be escorted to the provisional chamber," announced a towering being whose translucent skin revealed complex circulatory systems in perpetual motion. "The council awaits." As they traversed curved corridors, Okafor noted how the other species maintained distance from the humans, tentacles and appendages pulled tight against bodies, environmental suits sealed with additional layers of protection. "They truly fear us," he realized. "Not just strategically or politically, they fear physical proximity." The provisional chamber proved to be a vast hemispherical space with seating arranged in concentric rings. At the center, a depressed area contained what appeared to be acceleration couches modified for human anatomy. Surrounding them on all sides, representatives from dozens of species observed from various heights, creating the unmistakable impression of specimens in an examination pit. "You will present your case," instructed the same crystalline entity they had seen in the intercepted transmission. Supreme Director Kvex. "Though the containment decision is final, protocol requires hearing the contained species petition." Okafor stepped forward while his team took their positions. "With respect, Director Kvex, no decision should be final without complete information." A ripple of translator chatter swept through the chamber. Surprise, indignation, and curiosity mingling in a cacophony of alien vocalizations. "You know my designation," Kvex stated, internal lights pulsing rapidly. "We intercepted your deliberations," Okafor explained calmly. "Just as you have observed us, we have now observed you. Perhaps this symmetry might form the foundation of mutual understanding." From her position near the chamber's edge, Ivanova noticed something the others missed. A subtle shift among a group of insectoid beings whose compound eyes reflected light differently than the others. While most aliens recoiled at Okafor's revelation, these creatures leaned forward with what appeared to be heightened interest. One of them, distinguished by intricate patterns etched into its carapace, made a series of clicking sounds that the translation device rendered as, "The humans demonstrate technological capability beyond our projections. Quantum interception indicates advancement accelerating at 17% above threshold projections." "Irrelevant," Kvex dismissed. "Technological advancement without ethical evolution merely creates more efficient destroyers." Okafor seized the opening. "You judge our ethics by studying our conflicts, not our resolutions. You've seen our wars but ignored how we've created institutions to prevent them. You've witnessed our environmental destruction, but missed our restoration efforts." He gestured to the data tablets each delegation member carried. "We've brought evidence of humanity's ethical evolution alongside our technological advancements. Before condemning us to isolation, at least examine the complete record." The chamber erupted in divergent reactions, some species chittering in obvious dismissal, others emitting pheromones that the translators identified as indicating curiosity or hesitation. Amid the chaos, the distinguished insectoid being, Avoth, according to Ivanova's rapid facial recognition scan, made deliberate eye contact with her from across the chamber. A private communication channel opened on her neural interface. "Your observer is noticed," came the message in surprisingly direct translation. "We have been watching longer than the others. There is more to discuss. Privately." Ivanova maintained her neutral expression, giving only the slightest nod while Okafor continued presenting humanity's case to an increasingly divided audience. In the shadows of the upper observation ring, Admiral Zix Terran watched the proceedings with growing disquiet. The humans weren't behaving according to any of the Confederation's predictive models. They should have responded with defiance, threats, perhaps even attempted violence, reactions that would have justified containment. Instead, they offered dialogue, evidence, reason. For the first time in his long career, Zix Terran questioned whether the Confederation might have made a catastrophic mistake. The Defiant's final transmission played on loops across Earth's networks despite governmental attempts to restrict it. Captain Raiko Tanaka's face, illuminated by warning lights, had become the unwilling symbol of humanity's resistance. "My crew volunteered knowing the risks," her recorded voice stated with eerie calm, as the retrofitted mining vessel accelerated toward the barrier's thinnest section. "We carry no weapons, only scientific equipment, and a simple message. Freedom is the right of all sentient beings." In the United Nations Emergency Command Center beneath Geneva, Secretary General Torres watched the playback with Secretary of Defense Williams and the Joint Chiefs. The bunker had become humanity's de facto war room, its walls now covered with holographic displays tracking the barrier's construction progress. "I told them to stand down," Torres whispered, her composed exterior cracking slightly. Tanaka was a mining engineer, not military. She had a daughter at university in Osaka. She also had the fastest ship in the civilian fleet, Williams replied grimly. "The Defiant's experimental fusion drive was our best chance at breaching the barrier before completion." The tactical display showed the moment of impact, the Defiant's desperate approach, the barrier's energy field fluctuating as the ship made contact, then the blinding flash that momentarily overloaded even the alien sensors. 17 seconds, noted Admiral Cheng, pointing to the timeline. "That's how long the Defiant disrupted the barrier before they destroyed it. 17 seconds during which we received these." He gestured to another screen displaying fragmentary sensor readings, data transmitted during the Defiant's brief penetration of the barrier before its destruction. "Enough to begin understanding its quantum structure," said Dr. Eliza Chen, who had been analyzing the data since its arrival. Tanaka succeeded. "She didn't escape, but she gave us something more valuable." Torres closed her eyes briefly. "Ensure her family receives the Presidential Medal of Honor, and prepare a public statement acknowledging their sacrifice while urging calm." Her words came too late. Outside, the world was already responding to the Defiant's destruction. In Moscow's Red Square, the crowd had swelled beyond any police capacity to contain it. What began as a peaceful vigil for the Defiant's crew had transformed into something more volatile as night fell. Effigies fashioned in crude approximations of the alien forms seen in leaked footage burned against the winter sky. Similar scenes played out across every major city. Tokyo's government district overwhelmed by protesters demanding military action. Rioting in Times Square, the European Parliament building in Brussels surrounded by a human chain of demonstrators. In orbit, Captain Amara Chen received the news of the Defiant with cold fury. The Sentinel's crew had maintained their observation position for days, watching helplessly as the alien barrier grew more substantial by the hour. "They didn't even warn them," she said to Commander Jackson as they reviewed the tactical data. "No communication, no opportunity to turn back. Just obliteration. The Russians are claiming they can modify an ICBM with a quantum warhead to target the constructor vessels," Jackson informed her, scrolling through classified updates from Earth Command. "The Chinese have activated their anti-satellite weapon systems. We're approaching a point of no return." Amara studied the barrier schematic based on the Defiant's final transmission. The quantum fluctuations here and here, she indicated 2 points on the display, suggest potential vulnerabilities. Not enough to breach it entirely, but possibly sufficient to get a message through. To whom? Jackson asked. To our delegation, Amara answered. If diplomatic channels still exist, we need to use them before someone decides to martyr Earth alongside the Defiant. Deep within the Confederation flagship, Dr. Okafor received news of the Defiant's destruction during a recess in the increasingly tense negotiations. The Confederation representatives had been unmoved by humanity's ethical arguments, focusing instead on humanity's history of conflict and resource consumption. He found himself alone in a corridor designed for beings twice his height when a shadow detached itself from an alcove. The Voth representative emerged, compound eyes darting to ensure they weren't observed. Your vessel's destruction was not unanimously approved, the alien whispered, mandibles clicking softly. The military faction acted without full council authorization. Will the council condemn this action? Okafor asked, struggling to maintain his diplomatic composure. The council fractures, came the surprising response. The containment policy has exposed ideological divisions that have simmered beneath our unity for millennia. The Voth's exoskeleton shifted color slightly, which Okafor had learned indicated emotional intensity. What your people call freedom is a concept some species within the Confederation have never experienced. Your delegation's arguments resonate with dangerous potency among certain populations. Dangerous to whom? Okafor pressed. To a power structure older than your recorded civilization. The Voth answered. Your containment may serve dual purposes, to keep humanity isolated, yes, but also to prevent certain Confederation species from being infected by your ideas. A distant sound caused the Voth to step back. The barrier is not merely physical, it added hastily. Information flows are equally controlled. Remember this when you next address the council. As the alien retreated, Okafor stood motionless, mind racing with implications. The barrier wasn't just a prison wall, it was an information firewall designed to prevent exposure to human concepts, which meant humanity's most powerful weapon might not be technology at all. Dr. Samira Ibrahim hadn't slept in 36 hours. The xenopsychologist's office in Oxford's underground research facility had become a nest of holographic displays, each running analyses of the barrier's response patterns to various Earth transmissions. It's definitely responding differently to specific content types, she explained to the Joint Military Scientific Committee, assembled via secure holographic link. Her hands manipulated the data visualization, highlighting correlation patterns. The barrier doesn't just block, it actively processes, categorizes, and, most importantly, prioritizes certain information for deeper analysis. Colonel Wai Zong of China's Aerospace Force leaned forward at his end of the connection. What types of content trigger the highest level of analysis? Creative expressions with emotional components, Ibrahim replied, pulling up a comparison chart. Music provokes the most complex response patterns, followed by poetry, then visual art. Scientific and mathematical information receives more perfunctory processing. You're suggesting the barrier is curious about our art? Asked the skeptical American general. I'm stating that the barrier allocates disproportionate resources to analyzing cultural transmissions compared to technical data, Ibrahim clarified. Whether that indicates curiosity, threat assessment, or something else entirely remains speculative. Zhang's expression shifted from thoughtful to determined. Then we give them an overwhelming dose of humanity's soul. 48 hours later, Operation Defiance launched from transmission stations positioned across Earth's surface and throughout the solar system. The carefully orchestrated sequence began with Bach's cello suite No. 1, its solo instrument chosen for its voice-like quality, its mathematical precision, and its profound emotional resonance. In the White House Situation Room, President Alvarez watched the real-time analytics as the barrier's energy fluctuations responded to the music. It's working, she murmured as the patterns matched Ibrahim's predictions exactly. The broadcast continued with a progression designed by linguists, artists, and psychologists. Mathematical theorems that transitioned seamlessly into poetry in 37 languages, followed by children's laughter recorded in playgrounds across 6 continents. Most powerful were the ecosystem restoration documentaries. Time-lapse footage showing devastated landscapes transformed through human intervention. The Great Green Wall of Africa, the restored coral reefs of Australia, the rewilded European plains where bison and wolves now roamed lands once thought permanently lost to development. On Voth Prime, a university student named Tykrolvex adjusted the illegal receiver hidden beneath layers of metamorphic stone in his dwelling's basement. The device, constructed from components smuggled by sympathetic transport workers, flickered to life, displaying the human broadcast that had been rippling through the barrier for the past 6 hours. "It's working," he chittered excitedly to his clutchmates gathered around. "The signal is stronger than yesterday." On the makeshift screen, human dancers performed a water ballet, their movements creating patterns that mesmerized the young Voth. Their species had evolved from semi-aquatic ancestors, and something about the fluidity of human movement in water triggered ancestral memories. "This can't be the species the Confederation fears," whispered Marin Zex, Tekrol's research partner. "Look how they celebrate the very elements of their world. My parent Clutch said humans destroy everything they touch. The Council has always controlled what information reaches member worlds." Tykrol replied, mandibles clicking in the Voth expression of defiance. "Perhaps that control extends to how other species are portrayed." Their discussion halted as the broadcast shifted to something new, a montage of human ceremonies from across Earth's cultures. Birth celebrations, coming-of-age rituals, pair bondings, and memorial services. "They mark life transitions like we do," Marin observed with wonder, "but with such diversity of expression. In dwellings, secret gathering places, and hidden viewing stations across 17 Confederation worlds, similar scenes played out. The human cultural broadcast, intended as a demonstration of humanity's value, had inadvertently become something far more potent, a revolutionary manifesto delivered through art rather than rhetoric." Admiral Zix Terran stood on the observation deck of his command vessel, watching the quantum barrier shimmer with increased activity as it processed the human transmissions. Behind him, his senior officers awaited orders regarding the growing civil unrest on multiple Confederation worlds. "The humans have weaponized beauty," he said finally, more to himself than his staff. "They fight not with warships, but with Baksh and Tagore. The Supreme Director demands immediate signal suppression," his second-in-command reported. "The military faction insists human cultural transmission poses a greater threat than their physical escapement." Zix Terran turned slowly, his 4 eyes focusing on the younger officer. "And what do you believe, Commander?" The unexpected question created visible discomfort. "My opinion is irrelevant to Confederation policy, Admiral." "Precisely the response I once would have given," Zix Terran said quietly. "Before I began asking why a civilization advanced enough to span galaxies fears the paintings and music of a species confined to a single world." Lieutenant Maya Ivanova had never imagined her intelligence training would be applied aboard an alien vessel. The maintenance shaft she occupied was clearly designed for mechanical drones rather than organics, its diameter barely accommodating her compact frame, as she worked to interface her specialized equipment with the Confederation vessel's quantum communication network. Years of experience suppressing her fear in hostile environments served her well now. Each breath measured, each movement precise, she methodically bypassed security protocols that, while advanced, hadn't been designed to defend against human infiltration techniques. "Gotcha," she whispered as her neural interface finally synchronized with the alien network. Data began flowing. Incomprehensible at first, then gradually resolving into navigable patterns as her implanted translator activated. What she discovered turned her blood to ice. The communications weren't about containment anymore. Extensive schematics detail a fleet of specialized vessels currently being assembled at a facility designated Terminus Zero. Their purpose was unmistakable: even across the species barrier. Planetary sterilization. Complete eradication of all life on Earth. Timeline. 67 standard cycles, which are translator calculated as approximately 72 Earth hours. Ivanova disconnected, heart pounding as she processed the implications. No secure channel existed to warn Earth. The barrier blocked all unauthorized transmissions. The diplomatic mission was being carefully isolated, their communications monitored and censored. She had one option, a desperate one. The Voth representative's private quarters reflected the species' evolutionary history, humid, dimly lit, with surfaces textured for gripping by both appendages and mandibles. Tallis Moore, speaker for the Voth Clarity Movement, was completing his evening meditation cycle when his security field registered an unauthorized presence. He pivoted smoothly, compound eyes adjusting to identify the human female pressed against the chamber wall, the one designated as a cultural attaché, but whose movements had always suggested military training. "Your infiltration of my quarters violates 17 protocols," he stated, mandibles clicking rapidly. "Your species' plan to exterminate mine violates basic decency," Ivanova countered, stepping forward. "I know about the sterilization fleet." Tallis Moore's exoskeleton shifted hue, a physiological reaction he couldn't control. That decision was not unanimous. "I don't care about your politics," Ivanova said, her voice low and controlled. "In 3 days, unless Earth receives warning, billions will die. If you truly believe the Confederation is wrong about humanity, prove it now." The Voth remained motionless for 23 seconds, an eternity in the rapid Voth thought process. When he responded, it was not what Ivanova expected. "The Voth Clarity Movement is not merely philosophical," he said, moving to a concealed panel in the wall. "We are the first organized resistance to Confederation authority in 12,000 years." The panel slid open, revealing a communications array unlike the standard Confederation technology. This network operates on principles the Confederation abandoned millennia ago. It can penetrate the barrier at specific coordinates for approximately 7 seconds, enough for a compressed data burst. "You've been planning this," Ivanova realized. "For longer than your species has had written language," Tallis Moore confirmed. "The containment of Earth merely accelerated our timeline." On 17 Confederation worlds, the movement that had begun with clandestine viewing of human cultural broadcasts had transformed into open resistance. The catalyst had been the integration of human artistic principles with Voth traditional communication methods. On Rigel 9, a planet primarily populated by methane-breathing crystalline entities, the central plaza of the capital city had been transformed overnight. A massive installation combining Voth temporal architecture with human-inspired sculpting techniques depicted the Confederation's history from a revisionist perspective, showing not a benevolent unification, but a systematic suppression of cultural diversity. The authorities' attempt to destroy the installation had been captured and transmitted across the rebel network. The sight of security forces firing upon unarmed artists sparked immediate public outrage. Within hours, the first mass demonstration began. Within days, the movement had spread to 12 planets. On 3 worlds, Confederation security forces opened fire on protesters. It was the catalyst the resistance had been waiting for, though not one they had hoped to require. Admiral Zix Terran received the deployment order with growing horror. His vessel, the Indomitable, was commanded to suppress civilian protests on Rigel 9. A population known for their philosophical traditions and complete lack of military capability. The order came directly from Supreme Director Kivex, lethal force authorized to prevent spread of human ideological contamination. In his 4 centuries of service, Zix Terran had never questioned a direct order. His species valued chain of command as sacred, a biological imperative evolved from their hierarchical social structure. Yet as he read reports of unarmed civilians being fired upon for creating art, something fundamental shifted in his understanding. The realization came with shocking clarity. The Confederation's fear of humanity wasn't about human violence, it was about human freedom. He called his senior officers to the command deck. When they assembled, many noted a change in their commander's bearing, a straightness to his posture that conveyed absolute certainty. "I took an oath to protect civilization from threats," he addressed them formally. "I now believe we have misidentified the threat." His first officer stepped forward. "Admiral, are you suggesting?" "I am not suggesting," Zix Terran interrupted. "I am declaring. This vessel will not fire upon civilians. Furthermore, we will actively interpose ourselves between Confederation forces and unarmed populations." The silence that followed lasted precisely 4 seconds before his weapons officer spoke. "I stand with the Admiral." One by one, each senior officer declared their position. Not all agreed. 3 requested transfer to other commands. But the majority stood with Zix Terran as he gave the order that would forever mark him as either traitor or visionary. "Power down all weapons systems. Open a channel to all vessels in this sector. The Indomitable is declaring independence from Confederation military authority, effective immediately." The Voth scout vessel Whisperwind slipped through the outer layer of the quantum barrier, its experimental phase-shifting technology, creating a momentary aperture just large enough for transmission. At the helm, Talis Moore guided the craft with the precision of a surgeon, while Maya Ivanova sat at the jury-rigged communication array, her fingers dancing across unfamiliar controls. "The aperture will collapse in 15 seconds, Talis Moore warned, his exoskeleton fluctuating between stress colors. "The data burst must be precisely formatted." Ivanova had compressed the sterilization fleet plans, tactical assessments, and defense recommendations into a single package, encrypted with her personal authentication code. As the vessel shuddered against the barrier's resistance, she initiated the transmission. "Sending now," she confirmed, watching the progress indicator with desperate intensity. For 3 agonizing seconds, nothing happened. Then the console flashed confirmation. Transmission complete, just as the barrier sealed behind them. "Return trajectory locked," Talis Moore announced. "We must rejoin the resistance fleet before our absence is noticed." Ivanova nodded, allowing herself a momentary hope that Earth now had the warning it needed. Whether they could do anything with that warning remained to be seen. 72 hours before projected sterilization fleet arrival, Earth received Ivanova's transmission. The decoded data confirmed humanity's worst fears while simultaneously offering the first real hope of survival. In the Himalayan Command Center, Secretary General Torres assembled global military and scientific leadership, their faces grim as the sterilization fleet schematics rotated in holographic detail above the central table. "Lieutenant Ivanova has provided us with more than just warning," Torres stated. "The transmission includes technical specifications for Confederation weapons systems, defensive capabilities, and most importantly, the operating principles of their quantum technologies." Dr. Chen stepped forward, her eyes red-rimmed from sleepless nights analyzing the data. "The good news is their weapons, while devastating, aren't magical. They operate on principles we can understand and potentially counter. The bad news is we don't have time to develop countermeasures from scratch. Then we adapt what we have," President Alvarez said firmly. "Every nation pools resources, all weapons systems, all research, all personnel." The Chinese general nodded. "Our quantum physicists have already begun reconfiguring our particle beam defense system based on these specifications. It won't stop their fleet, but it might slow them down." "We need more than delay tactics," the Russian defense minister countered. "We need allies." Torres' expression turned solemn. "To that end, I have an announcement. The resistance movement Lieutenant Ivanova mentioned has made contact. A vessel identifying itself as the Indomitable, commanded by an Admiral Zix Terran, is requesting permission to enter Earth orbit with 30 support craft." The room erupted in overlapping voices, arguments for trust battling with warnings of potential deception. Torres raised her hand for silence. "I've made my decision. We will allow the Indomitable to approach. Captain Chen's Sentinel will escort them, weapons hot. Trust, but verify." As the Sentinel approached the massive Confederation vessel, Captain Amara Chen felt a surreal calm despite the historical magnitude of the moment. The first official alliance between humanity and an extraterrestrial civilization was about to be formed in the shadow of impending extinction. Their broadcasting identification and intent, Captain, her communications officer reported. Translation confirms it matches the signature from Lieutenant Ivanova's transmission. Maintain defense posture, Amara ordered. Establish visual communication. The main view screen activated, revealing a being with 4 eyes set in a face that seemed to blend avian and reptilian features. He wore what appeared to be ceremonial armor, though Amara's tactical systems identified multiple integrated technologies within its structure. I am Admiral Zix Terran of the free vessel Indomitable. The alien introduced himself in carefully translated English. We come not as your executioners, but as your allies. The Confederation has lost its way, and perhaps humanity can show us a path forward. Amara studied his alien features, searching for any sign of deception. My mother once told me that true allies share not just their strengths but their vulnerabilities. What is yours, Admiral? The question clearly surprised him, 4 eyes blinking in sequence. After a moment, he answered, Our technology exceeds yours, but our society has calcified. We have forgotten how to change, how to grow, how to create something new. It was precisely the right answer, not a boast of superiority or claim of benevolence, but an acknowledgement of weakness that rang true. Then perhaps we have something to offer each other, Amara replied. Follow us to Earth. We have 70 hours to prepare for the fight of our lives. On the observation deck of the Indomitable, Admiral Zix Terran gazed upon the blue-white sphere of Earth growing larger as they approached. Beside him stood his senior officers and the Voth delegation led by Speaker of Truths. It is smaller than I expected, the Admiral commented. To think such a world could trigger the greatest change in Confederation history. Size has never determined significance, the Voth philosopher replied. The smallest seed can crack the largest stone, given time and tenacity. As Earth's orbital defense platforms came into view, primitive by Confederation standards, but hastily being upgraded with adapted alien technology, Zix Terran felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Uncertainty coupled with exhilaration. The sterilization fleet will arrive with overwhelming force. His tactical officer reminded him, even with our combined strength, victory is mathematically improbable. Perhaps, the Admiral acknowledged. But for the first time in my long life, I find myself inspired by improbability. The humans have a concept I've been studying. They call it hope. It seems to function as both weakness and strength simultaneously. He turned to face his crew, his posture straightening with resolve. Today, we will learn which. The sterilization fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel with mathematical precision. 300 vessels arranged in a hemispheric formation designed to systematically blanket the planet with overlapping fields of destructive energy. Leading the formation, the command vessel Inevitable Resolution dwarfed even the largest Earth-allied ships. In the Joint Command Center established within Earth's lunar base, human and alien defenders watched the fleet's arrival with grim determination. They're deploying according to standard Confederation doctrine, Admiral Zix Terran observed. Supreme Commander Vexkull believes this will be a cleansing operation, not a battle. Then surprise is our greatest advantage, Amara Chen replied, her expression reflecting the same calm focus her mother displayed in crisis situations. Initiate Orpheus Protocol. Throughout the solar system, seemingly dormant structures activated. Jupiter's moons, retrofitted with gravitational disruptors based on Confederation technology, but modified by Earth's quantum physicists, generated synchronized pulses that rippled through space-time. The carefully calculated interference pattern disrupted the sterilization fleet's precision formation, sending the first wave of attackers tumbling into chaotic trajectories. Gravitational weapon effectiveness at 82% of projected yield, reported the lunar base tactical officer. 37 enemy vessels experiencing critical navigation failures. On the main tactical display, the Allied fleet moved into position. Earth's limited spacecraft, supported by Zix-Terran's 30 vessels, and 17 VOF ships that had arrived hours earlier. The element of surprise buys us time, not victory, the Admiral cautioned. Their remaining vessels are adapting already. Dr. Eliza Chen's voice came through on the command channel. The quantum shield is ready. We can't cover the entire planet, but we've prioritized population centers and critical infrastructure. As predicted, the sterilization fleet regrouped with alarming speed. Their first counterattack, a focused energy beam designed to disrupt planetary tectonic stability, struck Earth's hastily constructed quantum shield. For 3 terrifying seconds, the shield fluctuated between stability and collapse before holding. Shield integrity at 63% and stabilizing. Dr. Chen reported. The VOF modifications are working. The battle escalated as both sides deployed increasingly desperate measures. Earth's modified nuclear arsenal, enhanced with Confederation targeting technology, claimed 4 enemy capital ships. The Allied alien vessels engaged in direct combat, their superior technology partially offsetting the overwhelming numbers they faced. Yet despite these successes, the mathematical reality remained stark. The defenders were outnumbered, outgunned, and rapidly depleting their resources. In the command center, Amara turned to Dr. Okafor, who had been observing the battle with growing concern. "It's time for your part of the plan." Okafor nodded gravely. "Let's hope they listen." Supreme Commander Vexcall watched with mounting rage as the primitive humans, assisted by traitorous Confederation forces, continued their unexpectedly effective resistance. What should have been a simple cleansing operation had become a costly engagement. "Target their lunar command center," he ordered. "Maximum yield." His weapons officer moved to comply when the communication system suddenly activated without authorization. On every screen throughout the fleet, a transmission began playing. Not tactical data or surrender terms, but something entirely unexpected. The image showed humans and aliens working side by side in the Lunar Command Center. Next came footage from Earth's hospitals, where VOF medical specialists collaborated with human doctors to treat the injured. Then scenes from makeshift engineering labs, where human adaptability combined with alien technical knowledge to create hybrid technologies. "This is Dr. Elijah Okafor, speaking on behalf of the Allied Species Defense Coalition," came the voiceover. "We know you came to destroy what you fear. Instead, witness what you might become." The transmission continued, showing not just the military cooperation, but the cultural exchange that had begun in the scant hours since the alliance formed. Human musicians adapting their instruments to accommodate VOF harmonics, alien philosophers engaging with human ethical frameworks, children from both species drawing each other with equal parts fascination and delight. Throughout the sterilization fleet, the impact was immediate and profound. Crew members from species that had been exposed to human cultural broadcasts paused in their duties, watching with undisguised interest. Those from worlds where the resistance movement had taken root openly questioned their orders. On 7 vessels, junior officers refused to continue the attack. On 3 more, entire engineering sections sabotaged weapons systems rather than fire upon the emerging coalition. Supreme Commander Vexcall realized with growing horror that he was losing control of his fleet not to enemy weapons, but to enemy ideas. The surrender, when it came, wasn't universal. 17 hardliner vessels attempted to continue the attack alone, only to be neutralized by their former comrades. The remaining fleet powered down weapons systems and entered standby positions. 3 months later, in the Grand Conclave chamber where Earth's quarantine had first been decreed, representatives from 27 species gathered for a historic ceremony. At the center stood humans alongside VOF, former Confederation loyalists, and species that had never before been granted full council recognition. Admiral Zix-Terran, now leading the Transitional Governing Council, addressed the assembly. "Today we sign the Cosmic Accord, dissolving the Confederation structure that has governed our worlds for millennia, and establishing in its place a true alliance of equals." The document, written in 27 languages, established principles that drew heavily from both human democratic traditions and the philosophical foundations of various alien cultures. At its core lay a revolutionary concept for many Confederation species, the right of all sentient beings to cultural self-determination. Secretary General Torres, representing Earth, spoke with quiet dignity. From humanity's darkest hour has emerged our brightest hope, not just for our survival, but for our evolution as galactic citizens. As the signing ceremony concluded, the newly christened Alliance vessel Boundless prepared for launch from Earth orbit. Designed as both exploration craft and diplomatic mission, it carried scientists and ambassadors from 9 species on an open-ended journey beyond former Confederation space. On the observation deck, Captain Amara Chen stood with Talis Moore, gazing at the stars that no longer represented boundaries but possibilities. "What will we find out there?" the Voth asked, compound eyes reflecting the distant suns. "New challenges, certainly," Amara replied. "New threats, possibly." She smiled then, the expression mirrored in her own eyes. "But also new friends, new ideas, new ways of seeing the universe." Talis Moore's exoskeleton shifted to the warm golden hue that indicated philosophical contemplation. The Confederation feared humanity would overwhelm the galaxy with conquest. Instead, you offer connection. "That's the irony they never understood," Amara said softly. "They feared us because they projected their own history onto us, a history of domination and control. But Earth's greatest strength was never our capacity for violence." "What then?" asked the Voth. As the Boundless accelerated toward the stars, carrying with it the hopes of 27 worlds, Amara answered with the simple truth that had transformed enemies into allies. "Our greatest strength was always our ability to imagine a different future, and then invite others to build it with us."